Creative Critical Reflection by Skye Oomah on my project, The Stalker. When I first created my film, I had the idea of a man being stalked all the way to a laundromat, with problems being caused by the stalker himself. I reflected on this idea, not understanding how I'd create it, but then I realized I was unable to film in a laundromat. So I decided to use social ideas, such as the bias against female stalkers, and created a movie trailer in which a woman gets stalked within her own house. In today's society, it is easy as ever for someone to get stalked with everyone's full personal data online. That's why I chose a movie which took place around this premise of a female stalker. The ease of finding details about someone became even more prevalent for me, especially when I looked up my mom's full name. When I looked up my mom's full name, my whole address appeared. Furthermore, when I looked up my address, my house's layout appeared, the cost of my house appeared, everything else about personally towards me appeared. So when I was creating this movie, I really wanted to show how easy it is for someone to be stalked in something familiar as your own house, neighborhood, school, anything that is very personal to you. Moreover, I challenged certain social biases by using a stalker which was a teenage girl compared to the usual lonely middle-aged men who have an obsession with younger women. This teenage girl was obsessed with a middle-aged woman for the sole purpose of killing, yet in the stereotypical stalker movies, it is usually a male who is using sexual motives. In my first part of my trailer, I wanted to use angles that would immerse the viewer as if they were in the product. I did this by using angles which viewed the whole scene, using many wide angles, compared to which were much more neutral compared to the over-the-shoulder shots, which make them feel as if they're the one being killed. The reason I used shots that were more neutral is to have the viewer feel as if they were separated from the movie, yet immersed in the scene. This take of making the viewer feel separated from the movie is not similar to conventional conventions. As in most horror movies / thrillers, the camera angles make the viewer feel as if they are the one being killed, not as if they are the one watching and unable to do anything or unable to affect the outcome. Later in the media, I started using more angles that would make the viewer feel as if they were part of the movie. And I made it feel as if they could change things, that they were the one that the movie depended on, contrary to my earlier use of unconventional conventions. When creating my mise-en-scene, I used very, very conventional conventions, such as having a stalker in the background. I put the stalker in the background and wanted the viewer to know something that the main character didn't, creating a very, very eerie feeling for the viewer. I also used darkness to create a feeling of unknowingness, having the power cut, such as in this scene. This use of darkness is found in other media pieces, such as The Babadook, where darkness is used to highlight the inability to know where you are and what type of area you are in, no matter how familiar, when you can't see. I also had to use editing a lot when creating my film, as it was filmed at dawn. I figured out how to make the scenes feel more fluid in time by applying editing effects and color coding to certain scenes to make them seem more light or dark than they really were. A common convention that I used that is found in a lot of other thriller / horror pieces is the convention of putting the killer in a position of power. In my case, I put the stalker in a position of power by using a camera angle that was low. This low angle made the stalker feel bigger, and such as shown here, it creates a power complex over the middle-aged woman which is being stalked. I also used the song Look Behind You, which is a slow rising sound that climaxes and then stops. This is a method which is used in a lot of other horror / thriller trailers. When talking about horror and thriller, the main population that comes to mind is young audiences. So when choosing a production company, I would choose A24 Films. A24 Films is a production company that sponsors small films and pushes them out to large media. Because of the audience of A24 Films is mostly a younger audience, I would assume my media piece would be watched by people under 30. Another reason I chose A24 Films is because of the directors who have created many successful films. One such is Midsummer Night. Midsummer Night is a film that uses amazing cinematography to create feelings of disconnection and stress. This movie is about a couple which goes on vacation, and it slowly rises to a toppling point. I would recommend this film. You should go watch it. It's a very, very well-made piece of media. Moreover, to market my film, I would use social media sites such as TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. The reason I choose these sites is because of the age group of my media. Similarly to A24 Films, the audience of TikTok and Instagram is mostly a younger audience. Therefore, I feel as if I would have a lot of success in marketing my film on the sites listed. Now, back to my target audience. As said before, my target audience is a younger group. And the reason why I think that this younger group would enjoy a horror film so much is because I am part of this younger group and I'm friends with many people in this younger group. I'm 15 and I understand why people would want to watch a movie such as Stalker. The reason why they want to watch this movie is to get a thrill. At the age of 15, there's not that many things you can do without challenging your parents to get a thrill. So it really resonates with me, horror movies and soccer films, because people my age just want to get a thrill. Another great thing about the soccer subcategory is that there are very few sole soccer movies made. A lot of the time there is another factor in play, or there's powers, alternate powers, ghosts, something else, not just the soccer. So it would be a new addition to the film category. And also, when I was finding this conclusion that younger people enjoy horror films, I did research because I was like, there's no way, it's just a feeling. And I was right. CBS did a survey finding that over 70% of people under the age of 34 enjoy horror movies compared to older ages, which have a significantly lower horror movie loving population. When making this horror movie, I would really hope that it would inspire my audience into creating films. So here are some things that I would give to them in advice. There are hundreds of things that can be talked about when the subject of filmmaking appears. But again, I cannot talk about this as it takes a whole year-long class to learn everything. So I'm going to talk about what's most important and talk about the process. When I was first introduced to the Class Ace media, I had no understanding of what camera angles were and how they changed the feelings of scenes. But as a matter of time passed, I started to learn certain things. One of the certain things I learned in the beginning was camera angles and how they greatly affect movies. They are the basis for all of cinematography. Of camera angle which very much resonates with me is Dutch angles. I really wish I would have used Dutch angles in my project, but I just could not find a place where they would fit. It is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, camera angle, and it is so great at conveying certain cinematography views that are very eerie and is very, very good for horror movies. It can be found in a lot of A24 films. In this class, I also figured out how to layer sound. I realized that all pieces of media use so many components, such as color coding, sound editing, all components which require a giant team. And I really, really give props to all the people who run these giant teams and who are part of these giant teams and push out pieces of entertainment to entertain us for a very, very small cut of the amount of money it earns, which is not that fair, but you know. I also learned that the beginning is the hardest part of a film creation process, as without a starting idea in mind, you can't finish. So I feel as if it's easy breezing once you figure that starting point out. But that, again, this may just be me, and this is my personal experience. But once I figured out that I wanted to create a project about a stalker, the rest came super easy. I had a vision in mind, and I was like, this could really work. And I was stuck in the beginning, though, because I didn't know what to do, because I was like, when should I start? And I just kept on creating new ideas. And again, as I talked about earlier, my beginning idea was about a man who went to a laundromat, and that won't resonate with people as much as something which is more individual compared to a very, very cliche movie of a stalker which has the motive to capture someone else, and it's very, very, very different. So, yeah. I also learned that without having the end in sight, you cannot finish the middle, right? If I didn't know how to finish editing, or I didn't know what I was going to do with my footage, I couldn't create nice, well-rounded footage. Luckily, in my creative process, I use people such as my mom and sister, so it's really good to have other people helping you and to bounce your ideas off of other people. You'll also learn when creating a piece of media that the first try isn't a charm, with at least 3 retakes being the minimum per scene. It is also insanely to know that editing is just as important as every other part. Editing is what brings your piece together. Without good editing, everything falls apart. So if you're creating your own piece of media, make sure that it focuses on every single part and everything adds up. So when taking all this into account, if I were to redo my project, I would most likely change the timing of recording, because after recording all my scenes, I realized that without a professional camera, it is really hard to record dark scenes without with confidence. Leading to my next point, I would rent a professional camera if I was re-recording this, which would allow me to have a much better ability to color grade my raw footage instead of using already pre-colorized footage from the iPhone camera. Renting a professional camera would also allow better stabilization and better quality. Finally, if I were to do this again, I would take an editing course, which, though I watched many YouTube videos and learned a lot from these YouTube videos, there's still much for me to learn when using editing software. So yeah, when talking about pieces of technology such as YouTube, they're very, very important to the creation of a media process. But even if you don't have the resources, you can still film media with not much being needed to create a good piece of media. I use an iPhone 14 Pro, which is a very, very high-end piece of media, but still, you could film something on something as cheap as a $10 camera from Walmart. And you can still create it to the max of your abilities, creating good cameras, angles, and using lighting to improve the quality of your cameras. You also need to consider what version of editing you will use. There are many free and paid versions to choose from. If you have a cheap budget, you can use editing software such as CapCut, as you can still create great pieces of media, but if you are part of a school or you have the type of money, you should buy or use something such as Premiere Pro or Final Cut. They're much better at editing very certain aspects and create much more professional looking, pieces of media. So when I use YouTube to gain insight on what my projects should look like. After integrating all of these technologies, such as software, hardware, and online, you can turn a scene such as this into a scene which uses many different aspects to create a well-rounded piece of media such as this. The song is also really important, such as I talked about before, and it can change a scene from looking like this to being suspenseful and having feelings such as this. So this was my critical reflection, and overall, this was a great process. I learned so much from this, and I really think it is a important course for all high schoolers to take. It has opened my mind into the filming world, and I view every piece of media differently now, wondering how did they get that scene? What was needed to create the scene? How many takes did it take? How did they get the lighting? And yeah.